best city this site.
Well, thank you so much, Mzwandile, there on the ground. Just speaking to, of course, the ANC Secretary General, Mr. Mzwandile Mbeje, just getting his reaction on the outcome of the local election results that were announced here by the IEC. But let's speak more about those results. And right now I'm joined by Professor Mbeje, who will give us more analysis. In a broad sense, what do you make of the announcement by the IEC? Of course, some political parties gained ground and some lost ground.
Well, I think firstly the IEC needs to be commended for a very good job. Of course, there were instances here and there that were not quite okay, but generally they've done extremely well, especially if you look at the fact that they have approximately 200,000 people working for them, so you are likely to have some bad apples here and there. In terms of the results, I think the South African landscape has changed completely. The results have rocked the politics of this country. For the first time, the ANC has really lost urban centers. It got less than 50% of the vote. The DA is the largest party in Tshwane. It seems the ANC is hanging on by the skin of the teeth. In Joburg, what is perhaps even more significant is that at the Nelson Mandela Bay, the DA is the largest party there, which is quite a landmark in that the ANC has been very strong historically in that part of the country. And for them to lose the city where its heroes, Omgov, Omre, Vuyisile Mini, they're all buried there. So symbolically, if the ANC can lose a place like Nelson Mandela Metro, it means that it can lose anywhere in the country, and it's quite possible that 2 years from now, unless the ANC does something different, it's definitely poised to lose.
Now, of course, here in the capital city, Tshwane, we see the DA also leading, and it is the government administrative hub. The president sits here in the capital city, but now the political dynamic is also changing right here in the government home, if you may say so.
Exactly my point, and this is magnificent from the point of view of South African democracy and voters. Because the ANC occupies a very credible, respected place in our history and our memory. And people revere the ANC for what it did, for the heroes that it produced. But now they are saying we won't simply worship you or vote for you based on what you've done in the past, but we will evaluate you on what you've done today. And on the basis of your performance, we have found you wanting, and they've decided to withdraw their votes. But not only that, in some areas, they've given their votes to the DA. The DA has grown, has shown phenomenal growth in places like Tshwane, in places like Nelson Mandela Bay, for instance, places where you would ordinarily not associate with the DA, because the DA is predominantly seen as a historically white party. So for the DA to get black voters, it looks like Mmusi Maimane is doing something good. We are seeing non-racialism in terms of our voting patterns. It means South Africa is truly becoming a non-racial democracy. So I think as a country we should pat ourselves on the back, because we are celebrating the fact that we are a democratic system. Ceremonies like this, elections, renew our faith in democracy. And the fact that you could have the ANC pretty much dropping quite significantly in the 3 urban centers, very valuable urban centers, and have the ANC accept the results without much contestation, is a good omen, is a good sign for the future. That should our political landscape continue to change. We are unlikely to see a violent reaction to loss of power, because that is our fear. A party that is used to being in power, a party that thinks it deserves to rule South Africa, for it to accept defeat in the way that the ANC has done is something commendable.
And that's really the story that is playing out here. I mean, 22 years of democracy. This is also perhaps giving another indication of the maturity of the country's democracy.
Maturity of the country's democracy and the diversity of choice. I think another major story of this election is the emergence of the EFF at a local level. They are going to be kingmakers in a number of municipalities. Of course, here in Johannesburg and Tshwane, they are going to decide who forms government. And they are pushing a hard bargain. I think one of the things that they've been saying is that if they give any of the parties their support in these metros, they might push for support to control a municipality elsewhere because they want to demonstrate what they can do as a municipality government.
Okay, I want you to hold it right there. Let's cross again to my colleague Mzwandile Mbeje, who's on the floor.
Here I'm with PAC Narias Moloto, the Secretary General of the PAC, to give us his reaction on the results. PAC maybe didn't do that well, but they did get some seats. What's your reaction?
Look, as PAC we are very happy. Remember, almost all the parties had 18 months to prepare. PAC has literally 3 weeks to prepare. And in that 3 weeks, we have got more than 76,000 votes as compared to our last. Now, this is the best performance given the time, given the resources, and given that we have came very late into the process of this. So we are happy. For us, it is laying a very good ground for us to go forward. We are looking forward to 2019. I think the people of this country will see the best of the PAC.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There was PAC there giving their view after the IEC has pronounced on the finality of the results. Of course, there is still an outstanding result, that of the city of Johannesburg. So they said in about a few hours that municipality will be declared as well. Patricia.
Of course, we continue our analysis here with Professor Ntlekana. Of course, we talked about how the ANC has lost so much ground. Before that, we listened to the interview that Mzwandile Mbeje was doing with the SG of the ANC, Mr. Mbeje, and he sounds more positive and still expressing confidence.
Well, politicians always sound confident. Of course, there are serious negotiations happening elsewhere. The ANC is in deep trouble. Perhaps it's not good PR to acknowledge that now, but certainly they are very worried. But I think it would be amiss of us not to mention what happened here earlier. What happened here is unprecedented. That you would have when the results are being presented, you would have protesters holding placards, protesting against the rape allegation that President Zuma was cleared of. For something like that to happen in a place like that is quite unusual, and I'm afraid I don't think President Zuma would have been impressed with that, because it reminds us of all the other problems that our country has had and the problems that he has had specifically. I don't think that's the last thing he would have wished to have happen on a day like this.
And talking of the sideshows and the shockers that happened while the president, of course, took to the podium, we saw the EFF staging a walkout.
The EFF, of course, as you know, has been saying because the Constitutional Court said President Zuma breached his oath of office, he's not fit to be president. So they do not recognize him as a president. And I imagine it would be fitting to have a protest like that in this space, because what you're seeing here is compliance with the Constitution. This is an occasion that affirms our constitutional state, right? So to have someone therefore who violated the Constitution officiating in a ceremonial constitutional activity like this leaves a bad taste in one's mouth.
But it also speaks volumes about South Africa's democracy, that while a sitting president approaches the podium, this can still happen. I mean, in other countries that would never happen. It must be something that South Africa must get credit for, although it has a negative spin-off.
Quite right. Democracies are not pretty. You have to allow for freedom of speech. You have to allow for things like that to be aired in shows like this. We cannot pretend that they don't happen. That's part of democracy. Protest is part of democracy. And you would have seen that people stood up when the president went to the podium. You might not like the person, that is Jacob Zuma, but you respect the office of the president. So we stood up in respect of the office.
All right, let's take a look at the graphics that are playing out there. Of course, the ANC still having the majority nationally, and the DA coming in second, and of course the EFF right at number 3. And interesting for the EFF for having, made such inroads, but we thought that they would do much better than that, isn't it? We expected them to perform better than what we have seen.
We don't have anything else to compare the EFF against. This is their first local election. They were formed about 3 years ago, so they are still growing. Their part of their strategy is hype, is publicity. Perhaps they are getting more publicity than their numbers suggest, but that's a good thing. Any politicians wants to have good publicity because that is good for the growth of the party. And frankly, I think they've done well, given their age and given the fact that they did not spend R1 billion, but spent about 10 million or so.
And of course, the ANC is still keeping its grip of power in the Free State.
Yes, it remains popular in many other provinces. The ANC is still a dominant party, but they have dropped tremendously. From 62% to 54%, that's 8%. It's unusual, and it confirms a continuation of a pattern of decline of support for the ANC since 2009. Since 2009, the ANC has been declining, which basically means that their president has been presiding over a declining ANC.
Of course. Now, after the elections, there's a lot of activities that's still going to take place. Coalitions, possible reruns, and all the other activity that might take place. And of course, it's time for politicians to roll up their sleeves and really, truly better the lives of ordinary South Africans.
It would be nice to know what would be the cause of those reruns, just to get a sense of the kind of impropriety that people were trying to do. Because we need to be alert to the range of bad things that voters do and what the IEC does when those things happen. Because people might be alarmed now that we have things like this, but if they are assured that we are doing these reruns because we discovered mishaps because of our checks and balances system, that creates and restores confidence in the ability of the IEC to run the election. And of course, there was a survey which they told us about earlier, done by the HSRC during the course of this election, telling us more than 90% of South Africans have trust in the IEC to run the elections.
All right, thank you so much. Of course, analysis there by Professor Mzwandile Mbeje here at the IEC Center, as of course the curtain closes on the 2016 local elections. But let's go to my colleague on the ground, and that is Mzwandile Mbeje, who will just give us a wrap from the ground.
Thank you very much, Patrick.